So the story is, I was playing my beats for Tupac, and he immediately started to freestyle right in front of me. I remember his sway.
He sold over 3 million records, but never got a single royalty check. Last month, Jon B shocked fans when he admitted he made less than $800,000 from his platinum album, Cool Relax. The 90s R&B star even started a GoFundMe to buy back his own music, but it failed miserably. Today, the truth about his feud with Jay-Z, his battle with the IRS, and the creepy comment about teenage Beyoncé that ruined his entire career has people gasping. From mansion foreclosure to selling his biggest hits for just $125,000, this is what really happened to Jon B. Jon B was born in 1974 in Providence, Rhode Island. From the start, music surrounded him. His father was a music professor and conductor, and his mother was a concert pianist. Growing up in a house like that meant classical music was everywhere. His parents expected all the kids to follow that path. His brother played cello, and his sister played violin. Jon did the same at first, learning piano, then adding drums and bass by the time he was a teenager. But behind the scenes, he was falling in love with something else: R&B and soul. While his parents pushed Mozart and Beethoven, Jon was sneaking around, listening to Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye. That quiet rebellion shaped everything that came next. When Jon was 4, the family moved to Pasadena, California. There, he grew up trying to figure out where he fit in. He was a white kid, deeply drawn to black music. By the time he was 13, he was already making demo tapes in his mom's spare room. Not just a few songs, he made tapes with 40 tracks, writing, producing, and playing everything himself using cheap equipment. He didn't just copy what he heard, he added jazz and other unexpected sounds that made his music stand out, even at that age. Still, trying to break into R&B as a white teenager wasn't easy. Executives would tell him flat out that he sounded too black and didn't look the part. But Jon didn't stop. He kept recording, kept improving. At 16, he had his own mini studio at home, teaching himself to do everything. That self-made approach would become one of his biggest strengths. To make money and stay close to the music world, Jon took a job stocking shelves at Warehouse Records. What most people didn't know was that his grandparents owned a record store, and that's where he really got his education. He studied old vinyl records, learning from legends like Earth, Wind and Fire, Donna Summer, and the Bee Gees. He'd borrow records, take them home, and listen to them over and over. Meanwhile, at Warehouse Records, he started slipping his demo tapes into shopping bags whenever someone important came in. It was a risky move, but it worked. He started getting attention. Before he ever released his own music, Jon started writing songs for big names. One of his early tracks, Heaven Can Wait, was meant for Blackstreet, but Michael Jackson heard it and wanted it for himself. That kind of thing didn't happen to just anyone. He also worked with Toni Braxton, New Edition, After 7, and more. His talent was undeniable. Even Peter Gabriel noticed, inviting Jon to a songwriting retreat in England. All of this happened before Jon had even released a single. Then came a moment that changed everything. In 1994, Jon was at Motown Records when he decided to drop off a demo tape at a tiny label nearby called Yab Yum Entertainment. It was run by Tracy Edmonds, the wife of R&B star Babyface. Jon didn't think much of it until he got a phone call in the middle of his Motown meeting. It was Babyface. He had heard Jon's tape and wanted to meet him immediately. That moment launched Jon's career. Babyface even wrote a song just for him, Someone to Love, and recorded it as a duet. But behind the scenes, things weren't smooth. Babyface had originally planned to keep the song for himself. Executives at the label didn't want to give it to Jon. They thought it was too good to waste on a newcomer, especially a white one. Jon knew he had to nail it. He re-recorded the song 7 times. Studio sessions stretched into the early hours as Babyface pushed for perfection. The pressure was intense, especially when the song was picked for the Bad Boys movie soundtrack. Producers worried about using a new, unknown artist, but all that hard work paid off. Someone to Love became a hit, reaching the top 10 on the Billboard charts and earning a Grammy nomination. Even with that success, the industry still had doubts. When the song hit the radio, most listeners thought Jon was black. His voice, his style, everything pointed to that. But executives were scared to reveal his face. For months, promotional materials showed only shadows or silhouettes. His music video stayed in limbo while the label debated how to handle it. When it finally came out, Jon was shown in dark lighting, and Babyface took center stage to give the project more credibility. Even his album cover hid his image at first. It wasn't until the second single, Pretty Girl, that the label let Jon be fully visible. When the Grammy nomination came, it was a big deal, but it came with its own set of problems. Some people argued that because Jon was white, the song didn't belong in the R&B category, even though that's where it had charted. The Academy moved it to pop, which upset Jon. He appreciated the honor but felt like he was being pushed out of the very genre he loved. It was a strange place to be. Some people thought he was getting special treatment, while others didn't take him seriously because of his race. Still, the nomination boosted his profile and his album sales soared. That album, Bona Fide, came out in May 1995. It was different from anything else at the time. Jon wrote and produced most of it himself. It had smooth ballads, jazz-inspired tracks, and even some hip-hop influences. Babyface and Tracy Edmonds were surprised by how complete and original the album sounded. One track stood out so much, they named the album after it. Over time, Bona Fide sold more than 500,000 copies and went gold. Jon had proved that he wasn't just a novelty, he was the real deal. Still, the road wasn't easy. When Jon started touring in 1995, many fans were shocked when he walked on stage. Some had assumed he was black and weren't happy when they found out otherwise. In cities like Atlanta and Chicago, people walked out during his shows. But Jon didn't give up. He changed his approach. He opened shows with classic R&B covers, then eased into his own songs. He played multiple instruments live to prove his skills. He even started telling personal stories between songs, connecting with the audience and winning them over, one show at a time. By the end of 1996, the same venues that had been cold at first were inviting him back. Jon had found a way to be himself and still earn respect in a genre that didn't always welcome outsiders. By the time Jon B started working on his second album, everything had changed. He was no longer the new guy just happy to be in the room. His first album, Bona Fide, had done well, but Jon wanted more than just success. He wanted control. This time, he didn't want to be told what to sing, how to sound, or who he was supposed to be. But the label had other plans. They wanted him to be more pop, more polished, more marketable. Jon wasn't having it. Fights broke out during recording sessions, not fists, but sharp words, heated arguments. Jon pushed back hard. He brought in outside producers like Tim and Bob, Johnny J, and even David Foster. He wasn't just making an album, he was building something that felt real. Some tracks the label didn't even want made it on the final cut because Jon wouldn't back down. He kept saying no. He didn't want to be a product. He wanted to be an artist. That's why Cool Relax ended up running over an hour long. Jon wanted the whole thing to feel complete. Around that time, something unexpected happened. Jon got a phone call. His friend Bezel was on the line, calling from the set of Tupac's video shoot. Tupac, he said, was a fan. Jon didn't believe it at first, but he went down to the set, passed through layers of security, and walked into one of the biggest moments of his life. He played a few beats. Tupac started freestyling right then and there. Catesy and Jojo were standing nearby, watching it all happen. A couple of weeks later, they met up again and recorded "Are You Still Down?" It took one night. Tupac rapped and even sang parts of the hook. Just 2 weeks later, Tupac was gone. Jon thought the song would never come out. The label didn't want it. They said it didn't fit his image. Too gritty, too risky. But Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, stepped in and helped clear the vocals. That song ended up being one of Jon's most memorable tracks. Meanwhile, Jon's singles were blowing up. The first one was "Don't Say," a smooth track written by Mark Nelson. Jon had heard him singing it in the parking lot and knew right away. He had to have it. The video featured a young Sunny Lathan and gave Jon that clean, romantic vibe the label liked. It did okay on the charts, but it was "They Don't Know" that changed everything. That song hit big. It climbed all the way to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. Jon had written it about all the gossip hurting his relationship. The remix even sampled Biggie, giving the song some street edge. The track went platinum. Over 1 million sold. Jon had finally made it. But behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. In 1999, Jon joined a tour with Destiny's Child. It was supposed to be a big moment. Instead, it turned into a disaster. There was tension between the girls and their manager, Matthew Knowles. Jon ended up siding with Latavia and LaToya during their fight for more control. When Matthew tried to kick LaToya's mom off the tour bus, Jon and some members of Jagged Edge stepped in to defend her. After that, everything shifted. Matthew didn't forget. Rumors spread that Jon got blacklisted from radio stations and events connected to the Knowles family. His airplay started fading. That same year, Jon married Music Galloway, a talented singer who had backed artists like Macy Gray. Their relationship had always drawn attention, mostly because Music was a black woman, and Jon was a white artist in R&B. Some fans cheered them on. Others weren't so kind. People questioned his motives, accused him of using the relationship to gain credibility. Jon tried to shut down the noise. He told the press, "The woman I can relate to right now is a black woman." But the pressure never let up. By the time his next album came out in 2001, the marriage was already falling apart. Around that time, Jon asked to leave his label. He was tired, burned out, pushed aside. But the real damage had started years earlier. When Jon signed with Layface Records in 1995, the contract was full of traps. He only got 20% of the money his music made. The label kept 80%. And that 20%? It was before all the deductions. There were packaging fees, marketing costs, and studio expenses. One album flopping meant future albums had to cover the losses. Even when his music sold millions, Jon saw almost nothing. It was all in the fine print. His first advance seemed generous, $150,000, but it vanished fast. Studio time cost him $2,000 a day. Music videos ran into 6 figures. By the time Bonafide hit the shelves, Jon was already $200,000 in debt to the label. When Cool Relax came around, he got a $300,000 advance, but the spending doubled. Fancy producers, flashy videos, heavy promotion. His debt ballooned to over $1 million before a single album was sold. After Cool Relax went platinum, Jon thought he had some leverage. In early 1999, he walked into a meeting with LaFace execs and asked for better terms, higher royalties, a bigger advance. They laughed in his face. One of them said, "Kid, you should be thankful we even let you make music." Nothing changed. Then came the accounting statements. In August 2000, Jon got the numbers. Cool Relax had made nearly $15 million. But after all the deductions, the label told him he still owed over $1 million. Every quarter, the balance got worse. Sales went up, but his royalties didn't. By 2003, he had sold over 3 million albums, but hadn't gotten a single royalty check. To make matters worse, Jon had sold half of his publishing rights in 1996. He needed the money. EMI gave him $250,000 up front, but they got 50% of everything he wrote, for life. Even when 50 Cent sampled They Don't Know in 2003, Jon only got a quarter of the money. The rest went to EMI. That one deal cut his future earnings in half. So while fans thought Jon B was living the dream, behind the scenes he was locked in a losing game. His name was on platinum records, his voice was on hit songs, but the money, the rights, the control, all gone. In the late 1990s, Jon B was doing well. He was a rising R&B star, and Destiny's Child opened for him on tour. During that time, Beyoncé was just a teenager. Years later, a video interview from that era resurfaced. In it, Jon made some awkward comments about young Beyoncé. He talked about how he had looked at her when she was only 16 or 17. He even admitted it felt wrong since he was a grown man. His expression and gestures in the video made many people uncomfortable. When that clip started spreading online, the backlash came fast. People were angry, and some even called his comments creepy. That video may have done more damage than Jon ever expected. Not long after, rumors began to swirl that Jay-Z, who was close to Beyoncé, was quietly working to shut Jon B out of the music industry. Industry insiders claimed Jay-Z made phone calls and used his influence to block Jon from major opportunities. One example came in 2002, when Jon had almost finished a collaboration with Pharrell Williams. Suddenly, the project was shelved. Studio engineers said they heard that Jay-Z's team contacted Pharrell's people. In 2003, Jon was dropped from a big summer tour, just days after he signed on. And in 2004, he was supposed to perform at the BET Awards with Usher, but that spot was canceled at the last minute. Industry sources said Jay-Z, who had pull with the network, requested that Jon be cut. Things got worse at a party in late 2003. Jay-Z held a celebration at his 4040 Club in New York to mark his so-called retirement. Jon B showed up and tried to apologize in person. But when he walked over to Jay-Z and held out his hand, Jay turned away. He told Jon, loudly enough for others to hear, that they had nothing to talk about. That rejection happened in front of label executives and Jon's own team. After that, artists who had agreed to work with him started canceling. Within a few weeks, people in the industry stopped returning his calls. By early 2004, Jon's songs started disappearing from the radio. This happened even though he had new music coming out. Data showed his airplay dropped by more than 75% in just 2 years. That kind of drop didn't make sense unless something or someone was working against him. In cities where Jay-Z had business ties like Atlanta, New York, and LA, Jon's music vanished from major stations almost overnight. Radio managers blamed listener preferences, but some former employees later admitted they were quietly told to avoid Jon's music if they wanted to stay on Jay-Z's good side. Jon's 2004 album, Stronger Every Day, could have turned things around. It had strong songs and good reviews. The label behind it was run by Matthew Knowles, Beyoncé's father. But right after Jay-Z became president of Def Jam, everything fell apart. A planned 12-city radio tour was canceled. Magazine features were pulled. A scheduled TV appearance never happened. Jon was even supposed to open for a big R&B tour, but that was cut too. The album was barely promoted. Jon later said it felt like someone had hit a switch. One day, everything was on track. The next, no one would take his calls. With his album buried and his label support gone, Jon left Sanctuary Records. He had only signed for one album, so he was able to move on. But even with good reviews, the album only sold around 200,000 copies, a big drop from his platinum hits like Cool Relax and Bonafide. Around that time, Sanctuary Records was also going through money troubles and staff changes. Jon's project was left without anyone to push it forward. Hoping to keep his career alive, Jon signed with a small label called Arsenal Records. In 2006, he put out a Christmas album. 2 years later, he released Helpless Romantic, a concept album inspired by his recent marriage. Jon was proud of the project, but it didn't do well. It barely made the Billboard 200 and only reached number 11 on the R&B chart. The single, Ooh So Sexy, charted for just 1 week. Critics were split. Some praised his songwriting, others said he sounded out of ideas. No music videos were made, which hurt promotion badly. In 2009, Jon tried to reconnect with his old mentor, Babyface. They had made magic in the past. Babyface had signed him back in the day, and Jon's first 2 albums had both gone platinum. But this time, things didn't click. The music scene had changed. New artists like Chris Brown, Nayo, and Rihanna were leading the charts. Jon said he wanted to learn from those younger stars, but the industry had already moved on. His 2012 album, Comfortable Swag, was made without help from any major label. He released it on his own label, Vibeselect, which he ran with his wife. It gave him full control, but also meant he had limited resources. Some of the songs were recorded as early as 2009, and one of them even leaked online before the album dropped. Jon did most of the work himself, writing, producing, and promoting. In the end, it only sold about 20,000 copies. Still, Jon was proud. He said it sold more than his last label-backed album. By then, his touring life had changed too. In the late 90s, he played sold-out arenas with multiple tour buses. Now, he was performing in small venues for much lower fees. Industry sources revealed his asking price had dropped to around $25,000 to $40,000 per show. Touring got expensive, and Jon had to manage everything carefully. He credited his loyal fans for keeping him going and said their support gave him the ability to keep making music on his own terms. What happened to Jon B wasn't just bad luck. It was a slow, painful unraveling, one that began with a few words about a teenage Beyoncé and ended with a career that never fully recovered. Despite his talent and early success, he learned the hard way what it means to be on the wrong side of power in the music industry. Jon B's life changed dramatically in 2015. A company called GSM Entertainment filed a lawsuit against him. They said he owed them more than $130,000 for tour bookings and studio costs. According to them, they had set up a big concert tour for him, Chicago, London, and other major cities. But Jon never followed through. No calls, no texts, nothing. He just vanished. The lawsuit said he signed a management deal, then ignored his financial responsibilities while still playing shows they booked. When Jon fought back and claimed they mishandled his career, the judge wasn't convinced. His countersuit was thrown out. He hadn't even shown up to court for 2 hearings. That battle damaged his name in the industry. Promoters backed off. Venues didn't want to take the risk. At a time when he was trying to make a comeback, it was the last thing he needed. But his problems started even earlier. In 2012, Jon was already facing serious money trouble. He fell behind on his mortgage payments. His home in Woodland Hills, California, a house he had bought at the peak of his success, was on the verge of foreclosure. He tried to stop it by filing for bankruptcy just 5 days before the auction. It didn't work. In July, Wells Fargo took the property for about $563,000. That was nearly $175,000 less than what Jon originally paid. He was devastated. He kept trying to fight it in court, but every motion he filed got denied. He lost the house. He moved his family into a rental in a rougher area of the San Fernando Valley. Then the IRS came knocking. In 2014, the government filed a $78,000 tax lien against Jon. He hadn't paid taxes on the money he earned between 2011 and 2013. That lien meant the IRS could go after his assets, his home, his car, anything. It crushed his already low credit and made it impossible to get any kind of loan. The IRS had warned him. They sent notices. They gave him chances. But in the end, they had to act. In a later interview, Jon revealed something heartbreaking. He wasn't even making money from his records during that time. No royalties, nothing. Just live shows. He finally made a deal in 2016, agreeing to send 30% of his concert earnings to pay down his tax debt, which had grown to more than $100,000 by then. To stay afloat, he had to make a painful decision. In 2014, Jon sold a huge part of his music catalog, his biggest hits, for only $125,000. That included classics like Someone to Love, They Don't Know, and Are You Still Down? Those songs later made millions through streaming and licensing, but Jon had already signed them away. Worst of all, he couldn't get them back. Most artists can reclaim their songs after a while. Jon couldn't. He gave up his rights for good. In a 2025 interview, he said he never got a dime from his records. Not publishing, not royalties, nothing. That one sale cut off his future income just as streaming took over the music world. Still, he tried to bounce back. In 2016, Jon signed a deal for a reality show. The idea was to show his comeback, recording new music, rebuilding his life, and trying to support his family. Filming started in March, but it didn't last long. The network killed the show after only 3 episodes. Officially, they said there were creative differences, but insiders said Jon didn't want to reveal everything, especially his problems with Jay-Z, who he felt had played a part in his career downfall. That decision cost him about $45,000 and pushed him even further away from industry support. In August 2024, something unexpected happened. Jon B, the R&B singer known for his smooth sound in the 90s, called out Gunna and Chloe Bailey. He didn't just say he didn't like their 2022 song You and Me, he called it a ratchet record and said he couldn't stand it. That song had sampled his 1997 hit, They Don't Know. But Jon said he was never asked for permission. He told the hosts of the Can We Talk R&B podcast, "Actually never got my rights to do that record either. Gunna, we got to holler about that." People online didn't take his words lightly. Many were shocked that Jon, a white artist, would speak that way about 2 young black artists. One user wrote, "A white man calling 2 black PPL ratchet is crazy." Another said his tone was incredibly disappointing. The backlash grew quickly. Jon even hinted that he might take legal action. But the situation was complicated. Even though Jon performed the original song, he didn't own the rights. The producers Tim and Bob did. So the question of who owed what, and to whom, wasn't clear at all. Just months later, Jon was in the spotlight again. In March 2025, he appeared on the Joe Budden podcast. What he shared shocked everyone. Around 47 minutes into the episode, he revealed that even though he had multi-platinum success in the 90s, he had made less than $2.3 million from his first 3 albums. The hosts were stunned, especially when Jon said he only earned $780,000 from Cool Relax, the album that sold over 1.2 million copies. The clip spread fast. It pulled in millions of views on YouTube. Fans were surprised. Artists started speaking up. The hashtag #PayJonB started trending. Jon went on to explain more. Back in 1994, when he signed with Epic Records, his contract had a clause that cut his royalty rate by 75% for digital streams. At the time, that didn't seem like a big deal, but in today's streaming world, it hurt him badly. That wasn't the only fight Jon had taken on. Just 2 months before that podcast, he tried something bold. He launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise $500,000. The goal was to buy back the masters of his first 3 albums from Sony Music. At first, the campaign showed promise. In 1 week, it pulled in over $12,000. Robin Thicke gave $1,000. Another $2,500 came from someone people believe was Babyface. But soon, the donations stopped coming. By mid-February, Jon had raised only a tiny part of the money, so he shut the campaign down. In a video he later deleted, he told fans he had changed his mind. He said, "I realize now that this approach may have undermined my artistic dignity." Instead, he planned to fight for his rights through legal channels. Still, people in the industry knew the truth. Even if Jon had reached $500,000, that might not have been enough. Experts said Sony could ask for $2 or even $3 million, based on how well the songs were doing on streaming and how valuable they were for licensing.